Namaste and welcome the audience in this brand new episode of our program Guest in Town, Atithi Devo Bhava. It's me, Rohan Srestha, and today we are going to focus on the gender issue. So for this, we have in our studio to introduce her. She has been a journalist for more than 35 years and was the theme editor with the Telegraph, and she is in the editorial board of Himalaya South Asian, and she is Rajashri Dasgupta. Let me welcome her. Welcome, ma'am. Welcome to Nepal. Welcome to Himalaya Television.
Thank you.
কেমন আছি?
ভালো আছি। তুমি কেমন আছো?
আমি খুব ভালো আছি। Bengal ভাষা মিষ্টি ভাষা. Am I correct or not in that?
Thank you. That's your generosity.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So when did you come to Nepal?
I came in yesterday because there's this film
Festival, right? Film South Asia.
South Asia, the documentary film festival, 2017. So it's an exciting time to be in Nepal, so I'm not going to miss it.
Is this the first time?
I've been here before, but for the film festival, this is my first time I've come, and I'm very, very honored that they asked me to be part of the jury. So I thought this was an opportunity again to come to Nepal and to see all these documentaries. I mean, I hope you will come to the festival because the documentaries are very good, at very high quality. The directors have put in a lot of thought, and it's very well organized.
What kind of theme it has carried?
There's this wide range, you know, unbelievable range. So it's so difficult to, you know, slot them like that. There is on women and feminism, not directly, but yes, there's quite a few films on that. There are films on children, there's films on dissent, you know, there's films on what happened in Sri Lanka. It's a very again, a very political and yet not on your face, very well made film on this person who goes back to Sri Lanka and tries to capture the war-torn years. There's very powerful film on Kashmir through music, music of resistance, you know. So a wide variety. For women, you have from Pakistan, women being killed for loving a person the family doesn't want her to marry. It could be based, it's a film by a Pakistani director, but he could be speaking about India too.
Right. What about Nepali documentary?
Yes, there is I liked one documentary on Nepal, and it shows how women are breaking through, you know, those traditional modes and making a life for themselves. You know, you can see the tension between tradition and modernity and how women are negotiating the larger issues and coming forward. There are quite a few films on migration.
Film South Asia 2017, isn't it? The name.
Okay, I hope to see you there.
Well, we will be definitely there to watch the documentaries.
It's a very exciting time. A lot of young people there. You will enjoy.
Ma'am, Nepal for you. When did you last time visit Nepal?
Before the earthquake.
Okay.
Before the earthquake. But I love coming to Nepal. But I heard about the earthquake when, you know, and we were all very moved, and we tried to organize whatever.
Nepal for you, the Nepali people for you.
Oh, they're like, you know, we've grown up with having
home
friends.
Away from home, isn't it?
Yes. We've always had friends, and there's been a very kind of easy flow of people. So I think this is really a brilliant way of looking at South Asia, no borders. I feel very at home coming here. I don't feel I've come to a foreign country or something like that. And I hope when our Nepali friends come to India, they feel equally welcome. I mean, I just roam the streets like it's my hometown, you know.
Right.
I'm not at all an alien or a foreigner.
Emotional connection between the Indian and the Nepali people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ma'am,
and I hope it will get strengthened.
Right, we have to do that. And ma'am, what is your analysis on the overall condition of women in this South Asia, since it's been so long that you have been working for this women empowerment and all? What is your analysis on this?
The status of women is still very poor, let me tell you. But having said that, the women of South Asia also have a spirit not to take it just lying down, no longer. They are organizing themselves, they are fighting back, there is a larger awareness to change their destiny. So, if you look at the issue of violence, it cuts across borders, whether it's the women in Nepal or India or Bangladesh or Sri Lanka, Pakistan. And this violence, the issue of violence has been a kind of a running thread, a very central issue in the women's movement in South Asia, and it binds us together again. And how to strategize, how patriarchy is so entrenched in the families, in the communities, and also supported by the state to dominate women and to make women a second class citizen. But the good news about it is women are getting organized, women are much more aware. The problem remains, but I think we are smarter today. We understand how to counter it, we know how to organize, we know how to launch movements, protest, and we know how to go forward. We are not the victims of…
Can we compare those days and now? Those
yes.
days, in a sense, when you started your career, let's say before 35 years.
You know, at that time, people ridiculed us when we talked about women's issues. They said, what women? What are you talking about? Women? Problems? What is this women's question? What are you talking about violence? It was completely invisible. You know, people didn't want to even be aware to acknowledge that there was a problem in society and in the family. And so you had to start. It's not that we were the pioneers. Even women before us during the freedom movement also fought. But in the 70s, when we again took it up, you know, what we call the second wave of feminism, there was just to establish that women, there is a problem in society, we need to face it, we need to counter it. That was a major step. Today, I think it's much easier when we talk. You know, the fact that you are having me to talk about women's issues, I think those 35 years ago was not possible. I remember pleading with my editor and saying, please let me write just one paragraph
on female issue, on feminism.
On March 8th, International Women's Day. So, what is International Women's Day? And then he was so fed up because I was, you know, badgering him. He said, go ahead and do it, you know. And then he allowed me at least 800 words. And to me, it was, that was my first article, and in a business paper too. So, I think there was also, the editor also was taken aback, and my colleagues were also taken aback. For me, it was an exciting time.
Right.
You know.
But
so, it was for many women journalists. My story is not my own. It's of other women journalists who are fighting all the time.
So, the things are changing currently.
Yes. Today, you don't have to really, you know, fight with the editors so much to ask to write on women's issues. They at least understand that yes, you cannot ignore. I think what goes on, the tussle is for space, but now with online journalism, there is a lot more scope.
Ma'am, while talking about this media, the role of media, or how the media has given a space to the women issue, don't you feel that sometimes that even the media or the journalistic sector or this cinema has portrayal or merchandise this female issue or women?
Of course they have. Women is a great selling factor.
Right.
And the visibility of women now you see is very high. But does that mean liberation of women or emancipation
Don't you feel
of
that is
women?
an abuse?
Of course there is an abuse. So it doesn't mean visibility means a win-win situation for women. It's commercializing. You see the corporate…
So the things are not changing.
It is also.
On that backdrop, if we see in that backdrop, then the things
you
are
see
not
March
changing.
8th being celebrated by the corporate houses. You know, corporate houses are funding the ads saying, you know, International Women's Day, women have come so far. When have corporate houses, big business been friendly to women, you know? But on the other hand, you look at the other way, they cannot ignore the fact that women are there. They would like to see them invisible. Housework was invisible, women's contribution to society was been invisible, violence was invisible. But today, I think you must read it in a different way, that women are here to stay and they're fighting back for
Right,
that
ma'am. While
space.
talking about this patriarchal society, we only talk about this religious or religion patriarch or something like traditional patriarch. What about this capitalistic patriarchy?
I think all of them, there is an intersectionality of this religion, family, capitalism, caste. You know, you cannot remove one from the other. You get my point? So all of them is very, very well interwoven for the oppression of women. And when you see capitalism coming in a big way, why do you think women workers are taken? Because they're able to pay women less wages.
Right.
You know,
That is the discrimination.
Not, of course, capitalism flourishes in paying labor very poor wages, and women are the soft targets. Whether here the men have been unionized, they will not pay for the work for that pittance. They become the surplus labor of women. So again, it is that exploitation that goes on. So capitalism is no friend of women, no?
So how can we solve this problem, ma'am? Who is the main culprit behind this? Is again the society, since we have been advocating for this traditional patriarchy only, not the capitalistic patriarchy?
No, I think the fight is on various fronts. I mean, the struggle against is on various fronts. It's not only against feudalism or family patriarchy and community patriarchy, which wants women to be on a certain way, to dress in a certain way, to marry only in a certain way.
Right.
Okay, according to their own religion, caste, not because if women want it. They don't want women to study that much. She shouldn't study more than the men. So the community, family, all the time try to control women and her sexuality. So capitalism goes hand in hand with that. So you cannot say that I will only fight, one
reason.
It's a huge fight that we have ahead of us.
What kind of challenges?
The challenges, and that's why I think South Asia needs to be together. I mean, I can't think that only women in Nepal can do it alone without women in Bangladesh or India or Pakistan or Sri Lanka or Myanmar, because it's a kind of a shared, history we have also, and we understand our cultural, social roots. The moment you ask me a question, I immediately understand whether it's from Nepal or whether it's from India. So we understand where
Since
we
have
come
the common
from.
problem, isn't
Yes.
it? Ma'am, while talking about this women issue, do you think that we South Asian region is only backward in this sense, or the whole globe?
Of course, there is a gender bias. There is a gender bias. There is a lot of political problems with Hillary Clinton. She also supported the war efforts. This is not to argue for Donald Trump, but on the other hand, there's a huge bias against women. There was a huge bias against Mr. Obama being a president. Why? Because of his skin color. Similarly, there was this bias against Hillary Clinton. Why? Not only because of her politics, but because of her gender. So the problem is there, not in Europe too. But South Asia is also deeply entrenched in patriarchy, deeply entrenched, and unless we are able to break those chains, it pulls our development back. We will never be able to move forward, and that the state, the men, community, capitalism also must understand that.
What about, what is your view on feminism? How do you define feminism?
It's very difficult to define. Various people have different definition. It's an understanding. I think I assert myself as a feminist, don't think I'm a man hater. I can see the smile on your face.
That is what I want to say. Right? That is what the main punchline is, ma'am. Whenever we talk about this feminism, I don't know why I get that vibes that people say that there should not be male, or such kind of feelings, such kind of sense, such kind of smell come from the feminists.
No,
do you think that
feminism never talks about being anti-male. We talk about male patriarchy.
But there are people, isn't it? There are feminists who are talking about this.
Okay, not this kind of kind of feminism that we.
So you are liberal feminist, isn't it?
I think I would voice the. I hope to voice the majority view that we, that the liberation, our liberation also lies in liberating men. It can't be just my feminism. I'm not trying to replicate one power game by my power game,
That is what, whenever we talk about gender, I don't know why only female, there is no male at all in this
No, but the men must come forward. Why don't the men come forward? Why don't the men write books on women, make cinema on women, make documentaries on women? Why aren't the men working on women's issues? My question would be to you. Why aren't they? I mean, like the way you would be interviewing so many people on various issues, why don't you delve more deeply on women's issues? It's not my prerogative or monopoly only to talk about women. Men should do it. I mean, you're right, it would enrich the entire society.
Right. Besides that, the governmental policy also plays a vital role to empower the women when we talk about this women empowerment. Can you please highlight some or give an analysis on how Indian government is working to empower the women, the policy gati,
I would like to place it, put it in a different way. I think there's a lot more pressure on the government to deliver. I don't think any state gives any rights on a platter. There's a kind of agenda that women today needs to be educated. If women are not educated, we are not having enough workers to do this kind of software. And there's a pressure from the women's groups. There's a larger pressure that we don't want to be in this dismal darkness of being. Can you imagine we got our independence in 1947, and yet I don't have offhand figures, but the huge illiteracy rates in our country. Even today, our children are stunted, malnourished, thousands of children die of what? Malaria, of diarrhea. These are all preventable deaths. Why a country like India that is a nuclear power should be in such a dismal situation when it comes to its own people?
Right.
I would rather like to see India with literacy levels high, with children not dying to go into school.
What is the reason behind this, ma'am? You just said that India, it's becoming the economic giant. It's going to lead the whole world. But the problem is, the grassroots problem is quite, you just coined. What is the reason that India has not been able to adopt such kind of policy to, liberate women, to provide education to the children, to provide health facilities to the people? What is that? There is a big gap, economic gap between the people.
Exactly. I think the political class, the state has to decide what is its priorities. Is it to drum up war? Is it to have X number of more temples to be built, or hospitals, or schools, or do we want to educate our children and our women, or do we want to spend more money on buying arms? The state is making these policies. I don't think people want this. People want jobs. They want to send their children to school. They want basic health care. So this divide is very sharp.
We are talking about the role. While talking about the role, let's be quite concrete in the sense that what is the role of the government to empower the women? What is the role of the society to empower the women? What is the role of the male to empower the women? And what is the role of the women to empower themselves?
I think it all should go hand in hand, but it doesn't. It doesn't, you know. We have a very strong constitution. We have a very good constitution where women are given equality and, you know, cuts across gender, caste, and, you know, that equality is there. But then the implementation is poor. So if you look at every, you know, any kind of statistics, we are far behind the men. Only 4% of our women, I think, are in the organized sector. The literacy rates are much lower than the men. Maternal mortality is so high. But here, even the community must play a part. If the community and the family looks at women as a burden, they cry when a girl child is born, how do you think women will be nurtured? So you are starting with a negative that, you know, there is rejoicing when a male child is born, and, you know, women are seen to be a burden because she's going to get married, we have to give her so much dowry, so she's not educated. But having said all this, I must say things are changing, which I told you earlier. Women themselves are changing their destiny. Women are refusing to do this.
Changing just in the urban society. What about the rural side of India or Nepal?
You're right. It is, you know, middle class women and the ones who are going to the schools and universities who refuse to get married at the age of 14, 16 or 18, even late marriage.
That is the grassroots reality of our society.
But today the aspiration we can see even in rural areas, it's slow, it's not fast enough. But the exciting thing is that there is a change. I can see it, but am I very...
Ma'am, we live in India and Nepal, we live in a society of, you know, the concept of this Sas Bahu and this Nanad Bhabi type concept, you know. What is your say on this? Women is the worst enemy of women themselves.
You know, Rohan, I'm really tired of this kind of
giving answer.
It's so stereotypical way of, you know, placing women like this. Why aren't men slotted? But even I don't even want to ask you that question because it's not an issue. Why do you think? I mean, my mother-in-law and I were the best of friends. You know, I had no problem with my mother-in-law. In fact, she was the most generous, most loving, warming person. You know?
But we have got such kind of reality, isn't it? That the mother-in-law is not giving a space to the daughter-in-law, and something like women is the, you know, their one worst enemy, the so-called
I don't see it as that. I think society likes to place it in such a way and make it a power game. I'm not denying there is no power involved among the, you know, the senior member of the family and all, but it can be handled very well. And somewhere the family loves to talk about it. Society also enjoys this. And there's no way that they try to break this stereotype. And so they play into this stereotype, you know, and reinforce it.
At last, how can we, India and Nepal, come together to give the, you know, provide the equal access to this women, or let's say for this women empowerment? How can we go hand in hand?
The media like you, they should take on more issues.
Even the journalists like you, the senior journalist, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think the media plays a big role. And, you know, instead of stereotyping women like being their worst enemies of women, I think we need to capture the more positive in society and the more powerful what is happening, and encourage not to draw a glossy picture, but there are other stories, more powerful stories.
Right. Do you think that the South Asian media is doing in this sector as well to provide the equal justice to the people?
A section of the media, they do play a role. They have played a very good role, you know, and I think it can be improved definitely, because and I think it's also because South Asian women have come together in various platforms, and it in a way demands that from the media to respond.
Well, thank you so much, ma'am, for your time and valuable opinion.
Thank you,
so
Rohan,
much,
for having me.
Thank you so much. Thanks to you as well, the audience, for your time. Please do stay with us for more news and entertainment packages. Keep watching Himalaya Television. Namaste.